Hey guys, how you doing? This is Tom here from the AoStation. We do this show every week, Monday, usually at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is 4 p.m. Pacific Time. But I messed up. We're a little bit late today. We're only about half an hour late, but that's alright. It's usually at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over at twitch.tv/TheAoStation. You can watch the YouTube shows, which you're probably watching right now, at youtube.com/TheAoStation. You can also follow us at TheAoStation on Twitter and at Panamanana on Facebook. But let's just get into the show. This is a show about the AOS genre, also known as the MOBA genre, also known as the Action RTS genre. We cover games such as Dota 2, League of Legends, Heroes of Newerth, Realm of the Titans, Bloodline Champion, Super Monday Night Combat, Monday Night Combat, Rise of the Immortals. Even if you really like that game, I guess we'll cover it. But the first game we're going to cover, as always, is Dota 2. I say this every week, but there really isn't that much to talk about, considering that they're simply fixing bugs and introducing things from Dota 1. It'll get really interesting once the game is released and they start actually implementing new things into Dota 2. But for now, we're just getting old rehashed material. I'm not, like, upset about it. I'm just saying it is old material. And one of those things is the Brewmaster from Dota. And one thing you will notice about the Brewmaster is he is no longer a panda. He looks like a panda, but he has got, like, the pony ears. I guess this is for copyright reasons, that he can't be panda-ish. I don't know if Blizzard has a copyright on panda people or not, but he's called the Brewmaster now. All of his abilities are intact, though, which I find a little bit weirder. I thought that would be more copyright than the other way around, simply because Panda is based very heavily on a Warcraft 3 hero. Almost all of his abilities are Warcraft 3 abilities. Okay, I take that back. All of his abilities are Warcraft 3 abilities. None of them are specially coded. So I'm surprised that's not more copyright of an issue than the other things are. Yeah, maybe it is, as someone said in chat, Null Pointer, maybe it is too much like a panda from the new WoW expansion, Mr. Pandaria, but I don't really know anything about copyright. But if you're familiar with Dota, you're familiar with the Brewmaster. He's a basic hero, but he's very good at his job. And I doubt there's really anything else going on with the update. Yeah, see, just introducing the Brewmaster and fixing some things. So until they actually start introducing things, I'm really not going to be covering that much Dota 2 material. If you really want a lot of Dota 2 coverage, you should go over to Dota 2 Cinema, which is, I believe, youtube.com/Dota 2 Cinema. They do a great job of covering every single Dota 2 patch, as well as doing Dota 2 guides, etc., etc. I'm in no way affiliated with them, but I do appreciate their work, and I can't do it any better, so go check them out if you want Dota 2 information, especially. On that note, let's go over to the Heroes of Newerth news. This week, I'm just going to preface this by saying that our show is Monday, and usually Heroes of Newerth news comes out on Tuesday, which is unfortunate. Means I'm pretty much a week behind every week, but it's not really that much. They released a new all-avatar for Magmus, which is a moose, a fire moose. I think it's kind of weird. But also, another thing I find a little bit weird is that they keep adding all avatars to people who already have all avatars, and that doesn't make much sense to me, considering that they should be, at least I think they should be making all avatars for people who don't have them, such as Puppet Master. There are a lot of heroes that have been around since the very beginning that still don't have an all avatar, and then there are heroes like Pudge and Nomad who have more than one, more than two. But that's just me complaining. Here's the free-to-play list. And one thing I thought was kind of funny was Wild Soul's icon is actually for his all avatar, not his actual icon. I don't know if that's a mistake or a way to get people to buy the all avatar, but he's a good hero regardless. There's really not that much to talk about as for the free-to-play list, except that Nymphora is free-to-play. She's a very strong support hero, so if you really like playing support heroes, I would suggest her. Magmus is free-to-play once again. Very, very popular, very, very good ganker / support hero. He can be devastating. He's one of those heroes that can literally take out an entire team if he's played well, and the situation permits, of course. And Nomad is one of the strongest carries in the game. So if you have a team full of baddies and you want to carry, you might want to pick Nomad. What else? They fixed a few things, of course, which they do every patch, and they fixed an exploit that allowed players to avoid stat recording, which I find interesting. I wish I had known about that. Fixed. And they're also adding in, they did some VO work for the announcer. So now all of these heroes have announcer sounds when their hero is picked. Usually what Heroes of Newerth does is when they release a new hero, they'll have a placeholder soundbite for when you choose your hero. Instead of it saying like blacksmith or something, it'll say like roll the dice, or some generic soundbite. And I guess every couple heroes they'll hire the voice actor again to do all the voice acting for those, or at least the announcer to do all those heroes. So they finally did, and all of these heroes now have that little special VO work, which I like. Now here's a little piece of balance that I find very interesting. Not way back, but a few months back, in recent memory, there was a large problem in the Han metagame, whereas the ranged carries were really dominating the game. And a lot of people wondered how could you balance it so that melee characters had equal opportunities. And one of the ways that S2Games tried to solve this problem is by giving all melee heroes innate health regen of 1.25, which is 1 point higher than normal HP regen. I do believe normal HP regen is 0.25 for all heroes except for melee. And so that went well for a while, but now apparently they're seeing that a lot of melee heroes are out carrying ranged heroes, and so they're reverting that a little tiny bit. They're taking it from 1.25 health regen to 1 health regen per second. Which should help out a little bit in the early game, which is where it really matters. Because the entire battle between ranged carries and melee carries is that ranged carries can harass early game in the lane a lot easier than melee carries can, and what that does is it effectively keeps people from farming, because they won't be able to get close enough to get those creep kills that they really need. So having HP regen early on in the game is very good for melee characters, so that they can sustain in the lane without being chased out of it. Now, they did a few alterations to Artillery, who is the new hero that came out last week. He no longer removes other nearby bunker downs when cast, and bunker down now gives mana battery charges. I find that interesting because bunker down actually doesn't cost any mana. At least I've heard that. I haven't actually checked, excuse me, but I've heard that it doesn't give any mana. So having it actually give mana battery charges, although it technically makes sense in the gameplay mechanic wise, the fact that it's a mana battery makes me question whether that should be acting that way. And I guess it's good because mana battery doesn't proc off of allied charges, so it's really only nerfing artillery or artilleries that spam it. But it's such a very small change that it hardly matters. Electrician, they changed Cleansing Shock, which is his ultimate. They increased the cooldown at early levels. It still ends up being 10 seconds at max level, but at early levels it's a lot higher. I don't really know how that's going to affect the game much, but it's a strong ultimate regardless. So Lord South Forest is getting a little bit of a change. In fact, it's a little bit of a buff. What they're doing is they're changing more Certissima, and they're lowering the health that it gives back, so that it effectively deals more damage, sort of. Well, the way that more Certissima works is that it deals a crazy amount of nuke damage and then heals a little bit back. So it's much more for like spike damage than for DPS, because they will heal a little bit of that damage back. It's for finishing people off rather than dealing sustained damage over a fight. And so they're making it deal heal a little bit less on the other end. So that's effectively a buff, and the mana cost is being reduced, which is another buff. And then for his life tap, the mana cost is being rescaled, so it doesn't go down as you level. It's 60, but it's less than it would be at level 1, which would be 70. So it's better early game, worse later game. It's both a nerf and a buff. Soul Stealer is getting another buff, which I don't know where that's coming from. I do agree that Soul Stealer isn't as good as Nevermore is, because just the way that the games have changed, the way that Heroes of Newerth has changed from the other from Dota. I almost said the other game. That's awful of me. I'm sorry, but it's just the fact that there are so many other strong ranged carries who don't have that risk reward system as Soul Stealer does, that he's a little bit less effective. But they've already buffed him once. They buffed him, I believe, 2 patches ago by giving him more souls that he can collect. But now he when he dies, he loses souls. But now instead of losing 50% of his souls, he loses 33%, which is a very strong buff. Well, not necessarily a buff, because if you're good, you wouldn't be dying anyway. But it's a very interesting change so that there's less risk and more reward for playing him. But they're also changing Swiftblade a little bit. They're increasing his starting intelligence, but they're decreasing his intelligence growth. Another one of those buff/nerfs, just changing the way the hero plays overall. And they're changing Torturer's Impalement, so now it only does 50% damage to buildings. That's a big nerf to his pushing capabilities. But let's be honest, Torturer's Impalement is kind of a cheesy move. You just cast it, and it's a fire and forget move. You cast it, and it just does its work. So as long as you're standing somewhere near a tower, it'll kill it. So I don't really have a problem with that nerf. He's still going to be a strong pusher regardless, because he does have a lot of AoE damage as well as that impalement. So it's not going to kill him. It's not going to take him off of the pusher list for any intents and purposes, but it's going to keep a little bit of that cheesy push down. And that's really it for Heroes of Newerth. So let's go over to League of Legends. Unfortunately, since they pulled out all the stops for PAX East, there's nothing to talk about at all. There's no new champion. There's no really anything. So they reduced the IP cost of Malzahar and Kennen. That's it. Okay, so we're going to go over to Bloodline Champions. And last week we talked about a new Bloodline called the Dryad, who is going to be released. And she has been released. Actually, I don't know if she's been released. She might have been. Yes. Okay, she's released. Yeah, I'm just going to go out and say that. If I'm wrong, by the time you're watching this, she will have been. So don't worry about it. But she's a healer. We know that for sure. But I have never actually seen these abilities before. So this is going to be a first time for both of us. Her first ability, which is the mouse 1 button, is Songs of Despair, or Song of Despair, excuse me, which sends off magical tones that do moderate damage and inspires confidence in yourself, increasing your movement speed. So basically, it deals damage, but it's also a buff to you, which is interesting. Soothing Melody is her mouse 2 button. It sends off magical tones that heal an ally for a moderate amount of damage. That's your basic healing healing spell. Pretty much every healing class has a mouse 2 heal button. Her space ability, which is Nature's Aegis, moves the cursor. Move the cursor over yourself or an ally when casting a shield. When casting, to shield them from damage. The shield rotates towards the cursor position and negates projectiles and melee attacks that are blocked by the shield. That's very interesting. It's similar to Alchemist's shield, except instead of giving the movement speed buff for her, it also blocks projectiles. But it's not a passive block for projectiles. You actually have to aim it. That's very interesting. I like that a lot. The more active abilities, the more active play style in Bloodline Champions, the better. Because it's very much about skill and a lot less about, you know, close your eyes and right click and you might kill someone. Not saying that other games are like that by any means. But her Q ability is Nature's Wonder. And apparently it grows a magical grove at the cursor's position that slightly slows enemies in the area. It does moderate damage, amplifies damage, and slows enemies within the grove when a nearby enemy is hit by Songs of Despair. Remember, Songs of Despair is her mouse 1 ability. When Soothing Melody is cast near the grove, it pulses with energy and heals nearby allies. So basically, it's a versatile AoE spell that either heals or damages based upon what spell you use, your mouse 1 or your mouse 2. That's interesting. Suggestive Tune is her E ability. It fires off suggestive tunes that allow you to control an enemy's movement. Pressing the button again will cancel the effect and paralyze the enemy. I am wondering what it really means by control the enemy's movement. Is it something like Taunt from Vanguard? Does it make them move towards you, or does it make them follow your movement? I don't really know, but we'll see when we get in game. It's pretty much a CC ability that you can then cancel to paralyze the target. Nature's Companion sends a forest wisp toward the cursor position that heals nearby allies and damages nearby enemies. When the wisp disappears, it immobilizes nearby enemies as well. Pressing the button again after casting will pull you towards the wisp, destroying it. So it's another one of those abilities that both heals and damages, but it's one of those projectiles that you can then use to move yourself around, similar to Puck's Illusory Orb, or Malakin's Sword, or any of those abilities that are projectiles that help you move. Wild Vengeance is her F ability, which calls upon the destructive powers of the Earth Spirits to transport you to the direction of the cursor, doing massive damage to enemies and throwing them away from you, paralyzing them as they land. Actually, excuse me, that's her ultimate. It seems very interesting because she doesn't have all that much mobility. Most of her mobility is going to be coming from Song of Despair, as well as her Nature's Companion. So having an ultimate that also moves her is definitely a good way to compensate for that. Her EX abilities are Leaf Blower, which is her EX space ability. It creates a shield around you that rotates towards your cursor, reflecting projectiles that are blocked by the shield and knocking back enemies. So it's just a better version of that. And Purify is her EX version of Nature's Companion, and it fires a Raging Earth Spirit that removes positive effects and does a moderate amount of damage to nearby enemies upon impact. It removes negative effects from allies near the impact and heals them for a moderate amount of health. So instead of just being a better version, it's a different version. I like that a lot more about EX moves. As long as they're a different version rather than simply having buffed numbers, I like that a lot more. It creates more interesting mechanics, as well as making it really justifying that 40% of your meter cost, because your ultimate is usually the most devastating ability, but there are some EX moves that are really worth it. So I really do like her. She's a very interesting hero. I'm wondering how she is going to differentiate herself from the other healers, considering that there are so many now. But I really want to see her in game. I can't wait to play her. And we can go through the other balance things right now. Let's see, the Bloodline changes right now are that, they're changing Harbinger a little bit more. They were always considering changing Harbinger, but I believe that they're simply like changing them around numbers-wise for now before they come out with a actual concrete playstyle change. So they nerfed him for the past 2 patches, I believe. But in this one, Blood Grip, which is his mouse 2 button, the silence duration is now 0.5 seconds and 0.8 seconds, depending on the distance traveled. Once again, it doesn't tell me the older values, so I can't tell you if that's a nerf or not. I'm sorry. But inhibitor, they're changing inhibitor around, which is another hero that they've been changing around lately. They're nerfing, I believe, Runic Beam. They're reducing the width by 40%, approximately. The delay increased by 0.1 second. The immobilized duration reduced by 0.8 seconds. And the immobilized now breaks on damage. So I believe that would make it a incapacitate. They're also changing Stormcaller, who is another one of those heroes that they were thinking, champions who they were thinking about changing in the last patch. They change it so his Emperor's Wrath, which is his ultimate, deals more damage, but his lightning shields is now buffed as well. Sorry. Once again, you can read all of these. I'm not going to go through every single one specifically. I will have the links in the description, and you can read them all right now if you pause the video. But they're changing the Headhunter, who I haven't seen much of because he's one of those new heroes, as well as the Engineer. Excuse me, I'm burping a lot. But really, all they're doing is fixing a bug with Engineer. They're changing Metal Warden around. She's another one of those new Bloodlines who's still kind of finding her place in the game. And they're nerfing Gunner again. This is the second patch in a row that they've nerfed her. So they're reducing her damage of her rocket jump as well as the AoE. And the Seeker, I believe that's just a bug fix. Excuse me. Okay, so that's pretty much it for Bloodline Champions as far as patch notes for patch 2.4. And what that means is we're going to be going on to the last segment of our show, the second to last segment of our show, called the Bloodline Champion Spotlight, where every week we go over a different champion in Bloodline Champions, circling throughout each of the actual roles for a champion. This week we're going to be going over Gunner, who recently got nerfed. But we haven't gone over a ranged hero yet, so I decided we should go over one. And who else but the Gunner? I believe she best exemplifies the class overall. The role. Her first ability is a basic nuke, except it also applies focus on herself, which increases her attack speed. So the more times you hit with it, the faster you can shoot. Her ultimate, what am I talking about? Her mouse 2 button is Execute, which is it's one of her best moves. It's one of her biggest sources of damage. It's a channeled ability, but at the end of the channel, it deals a crazy amount of damage as well as stuns, and it pierces targets, dealing 40% less damage as it goes. So you want to combine this with her invisibility move, which I guess we can skip to right now. Her self buff makes her invisible for a short amount of time, but you can be invisible while channeling. So you literally pop stealth, then channel Execute, and you can hit someone straight out of stealth with a crazy nuke, as well as a stun. Her rocket jump, which recently got nerfed, is her basic movement ability. It's an interesting ability because you actually want to point it away from where you want to go. You literally shoot a rocket at the ground, and it launches you into the air. It deals damage and it stuns targets, as well as gets you out of combat. Or, I mean, gets you out of danger. Her projectile move is Disabling Shot. It's one of those basic CCs. Pretty much, the way the Bloodline Champions works is that everyone, it's not a template necessarily, but everyone has abilities that are somewhat similar. So this is her CC ability. And it deals damage, but it also applies Spell Block and Slow. What Spell Block does is it interrupts the next cast ability and disables it, for the next 3 seconds. So if you know someone's about to cast a really important spell, casting this on them can really stop them in their tracks for the next 3 seconds from casting that one spell. Her throw ability, which is what they call it, is Mortar. It's one of her best abilities besides Execute and Invisibility. What it does is it deals AoE damage as well as inflicts a blind, and what blind does is it literally makes your screen all crappy. That combined with Invisibility and Rocket Jump make her very good at sneaking away from combat, blinding her targets, jumping away, and then becoming invisible. It's really hard to track down a good gunner. And that's what you want to be doing with gunner. You want to be jumping around, you want to be blinding people, you want to be incapacitating them, and then you want to be using the stealth execute combo to really execute your enemies. She's a very straightforward hero, but she has a lot of abilities that let her be flexible as well. And her ultimate is very basic. It's a rocket launcher. She just shoots a bunch of projectiles that knock back and deal a crazy amount of damage, as well as AoE damage. So you can kind of imagine how you want to be using that. It's a good keep off me tool, because it does knock back targets, but also deals a crazy amount of damage. But it is your ultimate, so it will be costing you 100% of her energy, which is what you gain for dealing damage and casting spells and all that stuff. It's very much like a fighting game in that regard. She has an EX version of Execute, which is called Pin Down, which also slows, or it adds a slow to the Execute. And she has a EX Mortar, which is called Big Bertha, which deals damage on direct hit. It deals bonus damage on direct hit and less damage in the impacts around it, as well as knocking down targets. So if you're really good at aiming, you can deal a crazy amount of damage with Big Bertha, but I don't necessarily know if it's worth it, considering that it deals 220 damage for 40% of your meter, but a 1 rocket launcher out of 5 deals 200. So you'll be doing 1,000 damage with rocket launcher if you hit every single one. I don't think that really balances out number-wise. So you might want to be going for a rocket launcher more often, unless you really need that blind. But I don't know if Big Bertha actually blinds. It doesn't say. I don't think so. So there you go, guys. That's Gunner. She's a very average ranged DPS class, and I don't mean average isn't bad. She's incredibly good. That's why they're nerfing her. But she's one of those simple heroes that can also be very versatile in the battlefield. So if you're new to Bloodline Champions and you want to pick up a ranged character, you want to stay out of combat, you want to be juking around, you want to be shooting people in the face, pick up the Gunner. And we don't really have that many people in live chat right now. We only have 2 people watching the show. But if you guys have any questions right now for the show that you would want me to answer about the AOS genre, or about me, or whatever, you can ask them in chat right now, and I will try to delay for a few minutes. I guess I'll plug myself while I have the time. I do this show every week, as I said at the beginning of the video. But I also run a website called AoStation.com. It's kind of a blog, but it's mostly just about keeping you up to date on the AOS news. I cover Heroes of Newerth, Dota, Dota 2, League of Legends, Realm of the Titans, Supermanetic Combat. I cover pretty much everything. Not just the big 3, but pretty much everything in the genre. I write articles, I write guides. I'm really here to help you guys play new games. If you joined the community from playing League of Legends, I have a lot of guides from transitioning from League of Legends to other games, such as Heroes of Newerth and Dota. I also have a lot of specific guides about gameplay mechanics. Like if you want to know a lot about denying, or a lot about juking, or a lot about disjointing, you can check out AoStation. I understand I'm not one of the best sources for these guides because I am not the best player in the world, but I do believe I give a good I am a good source for the people that are new to the genre specifically. So if you're a seasoned veteran, you're not really going to find much on my website except for up-to-date news. But you can follow the website on Twitter at TheAoStation to see every time I post something on the website or every time I go live. You can also follow me personally at Pandamanana, which is Panda Manana. Manana, if you speak Spanish. Manana. It's spelled the same way, but it's pronounced Pandamanana. You can find me there on Twitter. But that is my personal Twitter, so you won't be finding... I won't be super professional, if you know what I mean. And we have a question here in chat by Green Cactar, who's a one of our common viewers. He's a friend of mine, so he usually always watches. Thank you very much. But his question is, why is Guild Wars 2 the second coming of Christ? I know this is an AOS show, but we do try to cover other games. I guess I can answer why that's not true, or at least my personal opinions about Guild Wars 2. Personally, I like Guild Wars 2, but I'm not super excited for it. Basically because I love Guild Wars 1, and they took so many things that I like about Guild Wars 1 and took it out of Guild Wars 2, such as the dual class system, the very dynamic skill system, and some of my favorite classes that they removed, as well as, you know, the monk. But I mean, I know a lot of people are hype about it. I don't believe it can fulfill the hype just because there's so much hype around it. I don't think it's going to die by any means. I think it's going to be a great game, but I don't think it's going to be that revolutionary, considering that Guild Wars 1 came out in 2004, and I love that game. But yeah, I guess we can stop there, considering we're kind of getting off track. But thank you for your question, Green Cactar. I hope to see you soon. Guys, you guys know where to see me, find me, excuse me. I'm at TheAoStation.com. I'm at Pandamanana at TheAoStation, YouTube.com/TheAoStation. You can find me here every week at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Pacific, at twitch.tv/TheAoStation. That's pretty much it, guys. I will see you next week. Bye.